Calling to order our Borough of Conshohocken Authority June meeting. Could we do a roll call?
All right. Christine Bertino.
Here.
Jack Ambler.
Here.
Aparna Chibber.
Here.
George Bass.
Here.
Tina Sokolowski.
Here. Great. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this evening we've got invited guests to go over our audit report. We've got several of our normal reports and approval of the minutes as far as business goes. I see that we potentially have an executive session. Do we want to call this evening, or we do not need an executive session this evening?
I'd like to update the board on the personnel.
Okay. Do you want to do that before or after?
I don't think there's going to be any action, so we can probably adjourn and then move to a brief executive session.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the official meeting. We're going to leave the room for an
No, I
executive.
think we can wait till the very end.
Oh,
of the
good,
meeting.
okay.
There's not going to be any action.
So just make it at the end. Okay, so we can continue with our regularly scheduled meeting. Great. Before we get started, do we have any public comment on any of the agenda items this evening or anything having to do with the Borough Authority business? Nothing came in via email? Okay. All right, so first up then on our agenda are our invited guests, which is Brinker and Simpson and Company on our 2023 financial audit.
My name is Kathy Seiler. I'm the audit partner in charge of the engagement. This is Madison Hardwick. She's my right-hand person.
Kathy, I just want to make sure they can hear you in the microphone. Could you come into the table? Sorry.
That's all right. I feel like I'm on trial. So just wanted to introduce our team. We are happy to be here. I know that we saw Tina probably our first day of field work, and I said we're going to make it to the meeting on the 25th. And at that point in time, I really didn't think that we were going to make it to the meeting on the 25th and be able to file the DCED report timely, but we did everything in our power to try and get here, and we are here. So I thank everyone for the opportunity again. Previously, we would meet with the Finance Committee and go over all the deliverables that I'm going to go over tonight. We'd have a very preliminary meeting with the board in terms of acceptance and everything. So because we no longer have a Finance Committee, what I was going to do is go into a little more detail in terms of your financials. We had a lot of things happen this year. We had an insurance claim and a recovery. We had the stormwater acquisition, which although it did not occur until March of 2024, you incurred certain expenses in 2023 that impacted this year. So that kind of changed and delayed a little of the compliance audit with Plymouth Township, and also caused certain amendments to that compliance audit as additional information came to light when we were during the course of the audit. And of course, we had the move of the administrative offices. So all of those things in 1 year is quite an accomplishment, let alone us getting the audit done. And I want to thank Shannon and Ed and Brent and Michael and Ed and the rest of the team, or Fred, sorry. All right, I'm going to start with the financial statement first. Usually I go to the governance letters, but because no one has really seen this, I wanted to go over the financial statement. If you go to page 1, you'll see our audit opinion. The second paragraph is going to discuss, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements, including the financial position, statement of financial position, changes in financial position, and cash flows are in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. In addition, we believe that sufficient audit evidence has been obtained in order to arrive as a basis for our audit opinion. Does anyone have any questions on our report letter, which goes to page 3? On page 3, we also take responsibility for the work that we performed related to the supplementary information, which we'll go over as we get to those pages. All right, on page Pages 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 through 10 is the management discussion and analysis. Bring to your light on page 4, the third paragraph talks about the acquisition of the stormwater sewer system. And on page 10, so I love these presentations because I always find a typo. And it gives me a time to go through it and then go back to my office. Brent, I believe the interim tag has been removed. So I will remove the interim tag from page 10 and just name him as executive director. A lot of what's in the management and discussion analysis is a summary of what's in the financial statement. Some of the notes and disclosures that you'll see in our financial statement mirror what's in the management discussion and analysis. Page 11 is basically our balance sheet. We refer to it in government accounting as the statements of net position. For the first time, you're going to see a column as it relates to stormwater and a column as it relates to sewer. Now, whether we combine everything in the future, we'll see how that goes in terms of how the authority is going to be able to allocate certain expenditures. Certain expenditures may be direct and they may be obvious in terms of whether it's a stormwater expense versus a sewer expense. Certain others may not be allocated. So for purposes of this being the first time, I segregated the stormwater activity from the sewer activity and then compared it to 2022 because at that point in time, we only had the sewer activity. If you look at the current assets, the last caption is due from stormwater. So the sewer or the entire authority was paying expenses on behalf of the sewer, the stormwater. Those are what we've quantified. So you'll see the due from the stormwater and the due to the stormwater. Of note also, you'll see inventory. That was something that Brent added this year in terms of actually having an inventory of small parts and supplies. Other than that, your statement of net position remains the same in terms of the categories. One item that you will see under restricted liabilities is the net pension liability. So that went from a net pension asset last year to a pension liability for 2023. I believe we have 5 individuals that are nearing retirement age. I would expect that liability is just going to grow in the next couple of years until they reach that retirement. Any questions here? Okay. Page 12 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. That's really your income statement for your traditional non-public entities or non-governmental. The big item to note and the big reason for the change, you'll see the disparity in the connection fees from 2022 to 2023. Again, very variable numbers. We just don't know during a period of time even how to budget that, so you'll see that when we get to the budget versus actual. If you turn your attention to operating expenses, 1.43 versus 1.16. I mean, that's, very, very comparable numbers. And then in non-operating revenues and expenses, we see the insurance claim income and the insurance claim expense. So what happened was we incurred expenses. We also received reimbursement from the insurance company. That claim is still ongoing, or have you completed the repairs, Ed? I'm not sure at this point in time.
We're very close. We're
all right.
Expecting next in July.
Okay, so we'll see that again next year in terms of our expenses and what the amount of the claim was. And any residuals, of course, will go as non-operating. And then we also have your capital contributions of $36,000 this year versus $271,000 last year, which is your developer contributions to the system. Any questions here? Page 13 is your statement of cash flows. This actually is my favorite statement because it really refers to and shows you where the authority got their money from and how they spent it. And that's really the cash flows from the operating activities. And you'll see in the first section, cash received from customers. 2022 includes the connection fees. So that's where your big difference is. And again, last year, we also had grant revenue, where we didn't have grant revenue this year. Any questions on that statement? The notes are on your next several pages. Want to turn your attention to page 18, where we're going to look at your cash and the breakdown in the middle of the page between your unrestricted and then your developer escrow accounts. And those are variable, again, depending on the activity in the borough. Pages 19 and 20 reflect the capital assets. We're going to talk about that in one of the communication letters. The transfers between construction and progress just means that those construction projects were finished and then those amounts were capitalized and then depreciated. Page 20 reviews your debt, and page 21 shows your future maturities. Again, that 1.79 interest rate is really looking unbelievable these days. And then when you go to page 22, you see the second sewer revenue note, the Series AA of 2021. Also on page 22, you're going to see the principal payments on the debt. Pages 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 all relate to the pension obligation, which is required disclosures by the government accounting guides. I'll just refer to it that way. Note 8 on page 31 talks about our joint sewer treatment agreement with Plymouth Township and what they've paid and what we've received from them. Note 9 talks about the commitments and the agreement with the borough related to the municipal services agreement. On page 32 talks about our CAM charges for our office space. Note 10 discusses our collective bargaining agreement that expires at the end of this year. And on page 33, you will see a comment related to the subsequent events and the subsequent conveyance of the stormwater system to the authority. On page 34, you'll see the budget to the actual, and you'll see the variance in operating revenues almost directly relates to the contract revenues from Plymouth Township, which are variable, plus the connection fees. Repairs and maintenance have dropped this year, I think, versus budget. I don't know if that's just a timing item. And then the project engineering costs relate to stormwater. So those were those costs that were incurred on that behalf. When you turn to page 35 and you see the collection expenses and the admin expenses, our budget is pretty good. You know, we were within $50,000 in both categories. And then page 36, the difference in operating income. Page 37, 38, and 39 is more pension information that's required. And then page 40 and 41 will break down our general and administrative expenses and our operating expenses. And again, very comparable, 23 to 22. Does anyone have any questions on the financial statement?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When do we have to actually file the audit as a final draft?
So if you approve it tonight, I am going to meet Shannon tomorrow morning. We're going to input the information for the DCED, and then we will file that by the 30th.
Is that the date, the 30th for the DCC?
For the DCD, however, they don't penalize you if you're late. So we're pushing for that because that's your traditional due date of that report. But certainly if you need time to digest this, I will still help Shannon with this submission tomorrow. We just won't finalize the financial statement. Just depends on your timing.
So So I'll look to the board, who are all basically new members through the audit process. Do you guys need time to digest this and better understand it to ask questions, or do you feel comfortable that you can make a motion to accept this? What's that? I feel like I understand. Okay.
Become all right. Anything on, page 36 is the only one that stuck out to me from, just from the budget versus actual. That's, you say that's primarily to do with the insurance issues on, is that,
Sorry, could you guys put your microphones on for me, please?
I'm sorry, what are you talking about? When you're looking at income before capital contributions, the 1301, is that what you're looking at, the difference?
sorry, on the operating income under depreciation and then capital contributions, yeah, increase in net position, just those are, budget versus actual are much different from each other, right?
Yeah, but I think if you go through the components, like, let's go back to page 34, and let's talk about the revenues, right? So if you look at the operating revenues, what are our big disparities? The connection fees, which are, it's
variable.
a timing issue, so you don't know. And the other one is the contract revenues, and they're based on capital projects as well as operating flow. So that, again, quarterly, you're billing Plymouth based on actual. Rick Orloff comes and does his compliance audit, allocates capital, looks at the flow, so there could be a disparity. So those are the big, if you look at that, that's $360,000 of the $452,000 difference. Then if you look at the difference in your plan expenses, you have the project engineering costs, which related to the stormwater specifically, which at the time last year, when you do the budget, is October, November. So you're not really gonna know what, that was an animal that just wasn't, you just weren't aware what it was gonna cost. And theoretically, you could look at the point of you were incurring these expenses even before it was conveyed to you. So where does that really go in the line? Okay. And then if you look at repairs and building, I think what's happened is COVID, you put off so many projects, then you ramped up in 22, what has to happen in 23, but more importantly, what cash flow allows you to make those repairs, because right now, you don't have any borrowing capacity. So everything is really coming from operations. I totally understand that in order to make more significant repairs, what's the rate increase? And how does that, what do your constituents per se think of that, right? So let alone having a stormwater fee that they never had before. So very sensitive.
Just to make a statement, the stormwater authority will recoup those costs. But the way we wrote the budget up, it's gonna be like 26, 27 until we bring our assets up in our structure, that if we have a capital improvements needed, if there's an emergency in the system. So we will recoup those funds that we spend over the last couple of years, but it's gonna be like 2 or 3 years out.
Okay.
Because we need to build the reserves up for how we're running with the borough, that if there's a catastrophic failure, we have capital money, funds that we can redo the repairs if something transpires. So if you're concerned about how that we expended, we will recoup it, but the game plan is in the future. So we build up our nest egg of funds in our coffers. That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
So
And I
just,
think,
it's going to be a delay.
yeah, and I think the other piece of the puzzle is Tina and I met, and Shannon met prior when we first started, to just go over the audit process, because the board is relatively new members, new roles this year. One of the things that we will want to look to you for guidance is, how do you want us to present stormwater? Theoretically, it's not really a funds, but I thought it was better information for you in terms of comparing some of your expenses to separate it out. But how in the weeds are we going to get in terms of allocating those expenses? When I was talking yesterday to Bren and Shannon, are we going to allocate part of their salary? Perhaps not. So then when we have a column for stormwater, is that the true stormwater column? There's other authorities where we just present the stormwater revenues similar to how I present Plymouth, just as a line item. And all the expenses, we're not distinguishing whether it's stormwater or whether it's sewer. Initially, when the authority acquired West Conshohocken, one year I think we had Plymouth expenses, authority expenses, and then we had West Conshohocken expenses. because we said, okay, if we break these out, then we'll be able to budget. So it just really depends on you. I think we have the codes in our accounting system set up, but it depends on how you want to reflect it, both from a budget point of view as well as a financial statement point of view. And I think this is a new reporting for a lot of authorities because the stormwater is just coming into play, right? You're one of the first, I'm guessing, on the cutting edge?
Locally, yeah. It's been happening across the United States, but
Yes.
locally, yeah.
Yes. All right. I will make myself available, everyone. I'll pass on my card, but I'm a cell phone away. So if in the next couple of days you have some questions, just call me, and we can go over any part of it. Or if, you digest this now, and then tomorrow night you say, hey, I have a couple questions, and we want to hop on a Teams meeting or a Zoom, I certainly can do that as well.
So, Aparna and George, do you feel comfortable if we just go ahead and put a motion in it?
Well, hold on, Tina, because I want to go over the governance letters that are actually more important than the audit, but that's okay.
I was going to ask, are you going to go over
Yeah,
the,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we
Yeah.
feel that we're prepared for, okay. All right, go ahead. Thank
Okay.
you.
So we have two letters. We have the one-page letter. Let's go through the one-page letter first. So this talks about significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we may have identified during the course of the audit. And I'm happy to say that with the board's oversight, you also use Major Master to handle the monthly accounting as an oversight for the authority personnel. We didn't identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. One of the items that I'm throwing out there for you to consider is currently the authority has a capitalization policy of $1,000. In the scheme of the capital assets that the authority has, and if we look at the balance sheet per se, we have capital assets of $26 million. Does something for $1,000, what benefit does that provide? And one of the instances I'm actually using is some of the office equipment was capitalized because of that capitalization policy. Some authorities are moving it to anything over $5,000 with a useful life in excess of a year. Some are saying $10,000. Because if you're budgeting for it anyway, then theoretically it shouldn't be capitalized. So if you budgeted for some of these office supplies and I'm capitalizing it because of your capitalization policy, then we're only showing a favorable variance, which we're kidding ourselves, right? Because we were still paying the cash. So just one of those FYIs for the board to consider. Any questions about that?
Is there a formula that authorities use to?
It's a gut, what seems reasonable, but you have this plan, right? So I always remember belt filter press. What was it, guys? $700,000 at the time?
And most, if it's something that you're not routinely planning on replacing through operating expenses, then you capitalize it.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, it's gotta have a life of greater than 5 years, and it's gotta have an expense of greater than $5,000. $1,000 or less, that's just operating expense. That's like, maybe a copier is, but that's really, a computer, no. Printers, no. Anything like that. And the same thing with like light bulbs, or no. And things like that. It's gotta be something that you would contemplate bringing in a contractor to.
Sorry, could you turn on your microphone for me, please?
And will have a life greater than 5 years. So
So-
I usually use 5,000 in 5
So
years. as a general
5,000's
rule.
been kind of that standard that people use, but
Everyone's
because
lost,
things
yeah.
cost more now,
You can raise it to 10.
can you go to 8,000 or 10,000?
I go to 10. I go to 10. And I'd have it. I wouldn't have it. I would never capitalize anything with a life less than 5 years. That's a routine operating expense that I expect to incur on a regular basis. I probably personally am more conservative, and I'm a 10-year person, but pumps fall into that 5 to 7 year. So I use 5 years because I consider a pump something that I would capitalize, and that has a 5 to 10 year life.
Do we need to consider the idea that we are now kind of looking at some electronics, which then are computer stuff, which then don't have that life expectancy of 5 to 10, it has a 3 to 5?
I think that becomes part of your operating expense.
Yeah.
That's
That's what I mean.
running your business, so I would not capitalize that.
That's-
That would be, I
that's
put in
what
your
I mean.
operating budget, because you want to have that line item in your operating budget that you can increase, because they go up significantly or don't go up significantly, or it's harder to put that into my capital budget. And one of the
We're
things.
not gonna borrow for that, I just wanna add, that's gonna come out of operations, I think that's what, Fred is really saying.
Yep.
But then when we think about that, Fred, and we think about the new technology that we're putting in, to replace a fuse is $100, to replace a board is X.
Yep.
Is 10,000 the
And
right number?
There may be items that are more than $5,000 that have a life of less than 5 years, but I would say are clearly a operating expense. So I think it's an and, not necessarily an or. I think it's got to be more than 5,000 and a life more greater than 5 years. Because there's things that may last 10 years, but it's $200. We're not going to put it in there.
Right.
And one of the things that I'm going to discuss, and sorry, I'm trying to get off of here, but is our capital budget and preparing that now, basically in July and August, so the board can approve it in September. And Plymouth, I don't want to be bringing to Plymouth a capital budget that has a bunch of things in there that are not really capital items, that we may capitalize. So, and that's why we have that meeting. But yeah, I would go 5,000 in 5 years as a minimum.
And it's funny, because as Fred was talking, because I wasn't sure if he was gonna go into the capital budget, but I remember when I was part of the budget a couple years ago, and cash flow was a little tight and borrowings were capped. And we started moving items from 1 year to the next, I think it was RBCs.
Yep.
And we were moving the RBC project $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. That's significant. And theoretically, you're gonna borrow for that. That was part of taking into consideration where a desk, $1,500 that's coming out of operations, it makes more sense that it's part of your operating budget and therefore we don't capitalize it. Now, easements are different. So
Yeah.
that's a little different animal, but that's the only other thing that I could think of that would be treated differently. And of course, the capital contribution. So when a capital contribution comes into the authority or is dedicated by Fred, gives us the dedication report, there's no cash that transpires. We are just recording the value of that and then depreciating it. So it is adding to the value of the utility sewer system. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right, the couple-pager letter, the 3-page letter. And this talks about the audit process per se. So in terms of the audit, there was a subscription-based information technology, generally GASB accounting standard, government accounting standard, really didn't have an impact on the authority, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. What I want to look at, and the bullet points are, what are the sensitive estimates that you as the authority board should be concerned with? Number one, the depreciable lives of the assets. So we just kind of talked about that. We also talked about the estimate of the net pension asset liability that is in your financial statements. That's coming from PMRS based on the MMO and your contributions. What are the sensitive disclosures? So we talked about the custodial credit risk, the sewer revenue notes, the authority's net pension asset or liability, the disclosures of the concentrations from Plymouth, the disclosure of the municipal service agreement with the borough, the disclosure of risk and uncertainties. We keep COVID in there. It's kind of the standard accounting language. And also the subsequent event of the intergovernment cooperation agreement with the borough. We counted no significant deficiencies during the course of the audit. There were no misstatements that were identified. There were no disagreements with management, a couple little hiccups in terms of how are we doing this, where's this, those kinds of things to make it to the finish line. When the financial statement is approved, I will ask a representative of the board and Vicki and Linda as well as Shannon to sign a management representation letter. There were no consultations with other accountants, no other significant audit findings, and then we just talk about the procedures that we apply to some of the supporting schedules as part of the financial statement, the budget to actual, the schedule of operating expenses. This plus the other letter, the previous letter, are required communications to those charged with governance, which is you. So I always say, if you want to put all 3 letters on your both letters and your financial statement on your website, feel free. I would be proud. The authority has come a long way in a short period of time. Any questions? So my plan is to meet with Shannon tomorrow. We will enter the information for the DCED report. Pending approval of the financial statement, it would then be dated, and then Shannon can file the DCED report. And bear in mind, if you do need additional time, there is no penalty. I have another authority that doesn't really file their DCED report until November. So there's no tax, it's just informational and more for compliance purposes. And again, I want to really thank Shannon and Bren and Linda and Vicky, and I chased Lauren Gallagher. I think she was on vacation last week. I chased her for the legal representation letter, so I got that. I chased Fred for the capital contributions. We got that very early, so that was helpful. Any other questions? And I didn't know if the board was planning on establishing a finance committee meeting again.
So I would ask our solicitor, what does our charter say about subcommittees?
You can create them if you would like.
So it's not called out as a specific committee?
And there's no prohibition against creating subcommittees. When we looked in it a few years ago, when the decision was made to form the finance committee, we took a look at it at that time, so you can certainly do it. And with respect to the audit tonight, if you're so inclined, a simple motion to accept the audit would be fine, and you can take a vote, since it is listed on the agenda as the presentation, so.
Any other questions?
I have a question about splitting out the stormwater expenses and income. Is that something that we would decide tonight?
In my opinion, I think that's part of our strategic plan, that we need to determine how we want the authority to run, and have some discussions related to how we look at the finances, because we may want to internally have it all broken up, but present it as a whole so that we can then make internal decisions on how we want to fund and operate and do those types of things. But I think from a strategic planning perspective, I think that's what we probably have to work towards.
And I also forgot, you got a new software system this year. So with that, your accounting system gives you that ability. Harris gave you that ability as well. But internally, your internal groupings per se could be different than the financial statement. And again, as part of the planning of the audit, in reaching out to Tina this past year and going forward, we can discuss what you want the financial statement to look like.
Thank you.
So I think we did away with the finance committee only because there were only 3 of us, so we figured we'd sit in a room together and learn it together. Now that we're a full board, I think we could determine whether or not we want to have that committee back, if anybody wants to make that recommendation as we plan for our future.
Yeah, there's nothing that has to be decided tonight. That original finance committee evolved over time, just because there were some that wanted to get more in the weeds and get a further understanding of where the numbers are coming.
We're a small board, and it is helpful to have all the information, so unless others feel strongly about having separate committees, it's helpful to know.
Yeah, I mean, we only meet once a month, so an ad hoc meeting is not necessarily a burden
Right,
for
we can
me
all- yeah.
specifically.
Right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, so if we are so inclined, do we have a motion to approve the Brinker Simpson audit report?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
We will date the management representation letter as well as the financial statement as of today's date, which is June 25th. I will send the letter to Shannon. Tina, you will probably most likely sign as well, and we will get the DCED filed tomorrow.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, approval of minutes for the May 25th authority meeting. Did anyone have any questions about the minutes? Hearing no questions or concerns, could I have a motion to approve the May 25th, 2024 meeting minutes?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item up on the agenda are our financial reports. Let's see. So first item is to accept the accounts payable dated through 6/20/24 in the amount of, sorry, lots of pages here, and small font, $569,451.81. Does anyone have any questions about the bills paid in that?
I just had one on the, on page 7, under the total sewer funds. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly. What's the 548 there? 548,000?
So Shannon, this was the question that I had for you.
Okay, so
The report looks a little different now, so it
Yes.
kind of falls in under the net invoice amount.
yes, so the 548,000, hang on one second, let me get there. So the 548,000 is the main sewer invoices. And then there's another subtotal for the escrow fund, which is the money from all of the escrows.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then that gives you the total.
Awesome, that makes sense, thank you.
I have a question. I just noticed that, like, we pay AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon. AT&T is mobile phones.
So yes, AT&T is the mobile phones. Comcast is the internet and the voice phones. And Verizon is a small bill. I believe that is for, one second. I'm not
Fire alarm?
yeah, I feel like it's for the fire alarm, yeah.
Fire alarm. Auto dialer maybe?
Yeah, that might still be in the auto dialer too.
The what?
There's the alarm system. That also might be in there.
Is there an opportunity to consolidate vendor for better pricing?
We could, really, I would think so.
I mean, we could try, we could,
Find out.
yeah.
I mean, if we're in that capital budget, operational budget kind of cycle where we're looking at opportunities, maybe. I have a question on page 3. The Geiger pump and equipment, CoStar's flood restoration, $91,000. That is the money that we would get reimbursed from, correct?
Yes,
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 that's for the control panel, the new control panel.
that's correct.
And then Instaform Technologies, the payment for work completed 12/31/23 for sanitary. Do we not do accrual accounting where we would accrue the cost in the fiscal year, or because we were in the middle of multiple systems, it was just easier?
We do try to do the accrual accounting. This was actually the payment for the little bit of work that was done, right? On the liner project.
Okay.
So that actually, I don't even know as if it's still done.
Some of that money was held because they haven't completed all the punch list. We, however, have to submit to the CFA technically prior to August 1st, but they have questions, they need to process it. So we are processing that payment for them now. We still have some additional monies and work out that I'll discuss in my engineer's report. But that was originally processed in February, the recommendation letter, and basically just held until they got some items completed. Now we're at the point where I need to get it processed so I can complete my grant.
So it is part of the grant?
Yes, it's a grant reimbursement, and that's why we're paying it tonight, so I can get reimbursed, submit for the reimbursement.
And then the, page 5, the loan interest dues, is that one time annually?
So we pay principal and interest twice on the 2 different loans, and then we also pay an interest payment once a year on each of the loans. So there's the big payment, and then there's a smaller payment.
All right, they were all my questions. Anyone else questions?
My only question was on the $91,000.
All right, hearing no other questions, I need a motion to approve the expenses at $569,451.81.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Could we do a roll call?
Sure. So Christine Bertino?
Yeah, Melissa, just-
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Jack Ambler?
Yep.
Anything-
Aparna Chibber?
Yes.
George Bass?
Yes.
Tina Sokolowski?
Yes. Okay. Motion carries. Penalty reversal, 301 Washington Street.
Yes.
Didn't we talk about that a little bit?
So we could talk about, so 301 Washington Street is Londonderry. They they tried to send us a payment April 10th, and we never received it. They didn't get it back. So they're asking, they did submit their payment finally after I sent them a letter. They're asking for their penalties to be removed because they did attempt to pay.
Are they paying online or are they paying with a mail check?
Check.
So maybe if they want to pay online and set up an account where it's all done electronic,
I can suggest that to them.
that
They
would
said
be,
they had proof.
They had proof. They did not send me the proof, but they said that they cut the check on April 10th and mailed it.
What is the proof?
Right, so they showed their
it like
proof,
a
but did they
register?
have proof?
They did not send that to me.
But it says in there, after having their treasurer do the research, they determined the check had not been cashed.
Right,
so that's their proof?
right.
I'll have to try that one.
It doesn't work. Just so you know, it doesn't work.
How much was the fee?
$1,300 and some change for both of them.
That was the late fee?
A late fee, yes.
Have they ever been late before?
No. They're usually on time.
Have we set a precedent in the past with any other people that we've waived late fees?
No, you're looking at each situation. Each situation is unique. This one is a very large bill. They pay, as Shannon has just confirmed, they are always on time, if not early. So you're not binding yourself for any other future customers who may ask for fees to be waived.
Do we have any expenses? Like, is the late fee intended to cover any expenses on our? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, not like that other one where someone actually worked on the problem or whatever.
The lien.
Yeah, the lien, yeah.
Right, they responded right away when they got the letter, so.
Do we file on record the voided check as a backup documentation so that if something gets lost in the mail again this year?
And I always put, it's a one-time courtesy.
Okay.
Always one-time courtesy, if we approve it. But yes, I can ask them for the copy and put it in their file, if you.
Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
I'm usually tough about this, but if they've never been late before, then
I want somebody.
Okay.
Can we make it contingent that they do the online system or something, or heavily suggest that in some manner, or?
I think once we get the legal review of all the documents, that's really where we need to move everyone towards. The U.S. mail is just not meeting the needs of its users these days. Is that a nice way to put it?
I agree.
Very diplomatic.
All right, so do I need a motion to waive?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm looking for is a motion for penalty reversal for 301 Washington Street.
So, I was gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
the first one is $1,360.65. And the second one is $1,330.16.
And why are there two?
There's two different buildings,
Two different buildings. So it's really 2,600.
really 2,600.
All right.
I'll
So
make the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Just going through the rest of the financial reports, were there any questions about revenues or escrow summaries or anything from anyone? Okay, hearing no questions, could I have a motion to accept the financial report?
I'll make the motion to accept.
I have a motion and a second to accept the financial reports for, I guess, June?
It's May.
June
May.
of 2025. May. These are May financial.
Yeah,
reports.
they're May, yes.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next item up on the agenda is our solicitor's report.
Thank you. We have one action item this evening, but before I get to that, for any of you who are wondering who the young woman sitting in the audience is, this is Carson Francis. Carson is interning with our office this summer. She's interned with us previously when she was in college. She graduated college in May and will be starting law school in the fall. So we're getting Carson out to all of our meetings so she can see what it's like, and I tell her each time, this is my favorite board of everyone, so.
You say that to
But
all.
I mean it when I'm here. I mean it when I'm here, so. The one item we have this evening is a resolution authorizing reduction of performance security to satisfy the maintenance security requirement and authorizing execution of a deed of dedication for sanitary sewer facilities for the project known as SORA West. The project and the work has been reviewed by Fred, your engineer, and he has determined that the security can be reduced to the level that they are requesting. It's the level that will remain will be sufficient for any work that needs to be done moving forward. And we're now, since they're at that point where the work is done, we can take dedication of the facilities.
Any questions on the solicitors?
Make
No.
a motion to accept the solicitor's report.
First, let's
The
do
motion
the
to accept the
resolution.
resolution.
Yeah.
Adopt the resolution. Yep.
So I need a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the reduction of performance security to satisfy the maintenance security requirements as recommended by Mr. Ebert.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And that concludes our report.
So,
Motion to accept, the motion to accept that then?
yep,
or-
now we can motion to accept the solicitor's report.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the solicitor's report.
I'll second it. Okay.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item up is the engineer's report.
Yep, and we have two grants, payment requests to the CFA. The work is done on the first grant, complete, there's no additional punch list. The amount remaining, I'm actually going to take this, it's actually B, The amount remaining is $103,488. We have eligible costs of $72,234. Basically, we're leaving $31,000 on the table with the grant. The reason for that is that when I did the original cost estimate and applied for the grant, I'm relatively conservative because I don't know what the bids are going to come back in. We got very competitive bids. So while you're leaving money on the table on the grant, that's just because we got competitive bids and we didn't spend the money. So that money will be returned to them and go back into the pot. The second grant, the amount remaining is $127,137.43. We have eligible costs of $127,037. So I'm leaving $100.24 on the table. That's about as close as you can get. The reason that is we actually, we took that project and we broke it into two projects because under the grant program that we applied for, you had a maximum project cost of $500,000. I was scared if I put it all in and I didn't have a competitive bid, so I broke it into like a Part A and a Part B contracts. We were able to fit both of them underneath of it and just coincidentally worked out very well. So I would request authorization to have the vice chairman sign the grant application. The work has to be completed by June 30th. We're done. Grant applications have to be in by August 1st, but I want to submit it now so that way I have the entire month of July to answer any questions, and get it done, that we're not leaving any money on the table. So I would request a motion to authorize the vice chairman to sign as well as the executive director to sign those applications, and I'll make the application tomorrow with board approval.
Okay, so you need a motion for the signature authority on the grant applications. Do you
Yeah.
also need a motion for the payment requests? Figures?
No, that you could if you so chose to include that in your motion, but there are two, and the grant ending in 291 would be a request in the amount of $127,037.19. The request for B in the number ending 831 would be for $72,234.34.
We don't think that there's any other invoices between now and the end of June.
We've been scraping them. I will say that we're done with that. We're done with all the costs. I do have another phone call with the contractor. They previously requested a change order for $100,000 to close. I denied it. They have come back, and we denied it twice, actually. They've come back and said, well, we'll take 50 cents on the dollar. I said, I will listen to you again, but the answer is going to be no from our board. If they didn't take 100%, they're not taking 50. Their work wasn't eligible. You spent 9 days cleaning and doing something that was part of your basic scope of work. I can't use public money and pay you because you're inefficient. And if you underbid a job, that's not my client's problem. That's your job to properly know and understand. If you would have come to me while we were doing the work and said that there's no way anybody could have done this, the pipe was half full of grit, it wasn't. And the reason I also say that is that in previous contracts, I did the section upstream and downstream. They had no problems. You have a problem in the middle. As I said, we got very aggressive bids. If they underbid it, that's not a reason for our people to pay more money. So I am going to listen to their higher management, and if they have some new thing, I will come back to you. But they haven't tried it in their first 4 presentations. But, so that would be the only possible thing. And even though we have money left on that grant, I still don't give money away because if you don't earn it, just because it's a grant. That's not a reason to pay a change order, in my opinion. So the answer is no. I don't see there's any more costs. There will be some minor punch lists and maintenance, but you have that with anything. So, I don't want to risk $190,000 for me to throw $500 more of engineering fees on potentially.
Is there any chance they're going to come back again and ask for this money?
They can keep on coming back and keep on being denied. I mean, I can't stop them and close them out. I mean, they could ultimately sue us for that, but that would be their next step, you know, I mean, but we have it very clear what's a requirement. We've denied it in writing. I have gone back publicly at meetings. I've discussed it with you. I've given my opinion there on tape, you know, I'm sure they've seen watched the videos. They know exactly how I'm representing. And I think they're saying that, well, if you have 50,000, if we cut it in half, maybe you'll meet us in the middle. Maybe you'll give us 25%. I think they've just mismanaged the job, and upper management is trying to get any cost back that they can. I can understand that, but it's not a reason I pay a change order.
We don't agree.
Yes,
Neither do I.
yeah, you know, so keep on lowering it down to the point where it's a nominal thing, doesn't make it right or not, you know, so. So I think we need a motion for those. Or it has to be a legitimate change in scope, or legitimate work that wasn't, you know, contemplated, change of conditions, not something nobody could have seen. But the other reason is, as part of my bid, we videotaped the inside of this pipe. So they had a video of what was inside of it when they bid on it. It didn't material change. Now, if we had a video and it showed like nothing, and then they go to do the work and it's half full of grit, I would have had a totally different opinion than you, and I would have said, listen, I reviewed the video, that's what they bid on, there was a skim layer of grit, they came back, they did it, you know, I don't know where that grit came from, construction or whatever, but it's now 6 inches, this is a legitimate thing. I mean, 9 days to clean 1,000 feet of pipe? I could do that with a shovel. And they're using, you know, it should take a day at most, so. I will listen again to see if there's some facts that I'm not aware of.
Why aren't they just doing it?
Oh, it's already done. And they didn't notify us. So a year after they did the work, they came back and said, oh, here's a change order for what we did, not a year, for what we did 6 months ago, and we never told you that it was extra work. And we never put you on notice that it was additional scope. And we kept on writing them letters of, you guys are behind, you need to get this done. Because, you know, you're walking down Washington Street, anytime you're bypassing flows near a treatment plant, it's caused that. So they came back, basically, I think what happened was they submitted all the payment requests, we did it, they then got all their labor costs in, and said, oh my God, we lost money. What are you gonna do? Well, it was a lot more. Well then, if it was a lot more, then it's a legitimate change order, then they should pay you. And I think that's what we're caught. So yeah, it would have been different if I was put on notice, hey, we had 2 days, it's now day 4, this is unreasonable, come out, verify it. It was 4 or 5 months later. After they had submitted all their payment requests, I had already paid them for the work. It was already done, and now they're saying, oh, we need a change order because our labor costs were too high.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, hearing no questions, could I have a motion to approve the vice chair to be signature on the application for the grant?
And authorize the engineer to
And
submit it.
authorize the engineer to submit.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Also on the table is a motion to approve payment request number 3 for grant C 000074291 in the amount of $127,037.19. And payment request number 3 for grant number C 0069831 in the amount of $72,200.34.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Since this is expending money, do we need roll call on
No,
this one?
no.
Or-
You're
because it's a
requesting
grant?
money.
We're-
You're requesting
Oh,
money.
yeah, we're requesting money.
Yeah, you already
Yeah.
spent the money, you're getting it back.
I'm getting it back, okay. All right, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Next item on my report is I'd like to start the capital budget. I'll just let the board know that I'd like to start the capital budget with the executive director and operations staff. We owe a capital budget to Plymouth Township. I think it's technically November. We like to have it in October because they need to incorporate into their budget. So, and it's basically a 10-year look ahead, but I can only change things within $150,000 for the next 3 years. Well, due to COVID, waiting for grants, we've really gotten behind on this, and it's kind of gotten dated, and I don't say it was done at the last minute, but it wasn't really well organized, well planned out, and really it's time to take a step back, and let's really evaluate our 10-year capital budget. Let's get real numbers on there so Plymouth Township can do it. Some of the things that we do, like we have 3 trains of RBCs, replace one every 10 years. So that's on a regular schedule. We have pumps that have a life of like 7 years, 5 pumps. So every 7 years, we budget to replace a pump. There's a lot of things there. The carbon odor control system, that activated carbon has got to be replaced on a schedule. We've gotten so far out of our schedule because of COVID and other things, we really got to reset it and get it so that it's straight. I'd like to meet and work with staff on July and August. My goal would be to present it to the authority board in September with the ability then to either after our September meeting but to get it to Plymouth in early October, allow them to review so that we're way ahead of our November date. Because what ends up happening, if I give it to them in November, they're just jamming it into their budget. They don't have a question to ask questions, and that way I can come back to you, if they meet early in October at an October meeting and make any adjustments, and it can be adopted prior to November. So I'm just kind of giving you a heads up and informing you that that's the process unless the board has a concern that says, no, don't do it till the last minute. Which I don't think we would be doing, but it is going to be a little bit more of an effort this year. Steve Clark and I, the former executive director, we spent a lot of time on it and really refined it about 7 years ago. And it was kind of been on autopilot. Now it's time to dig back in and really get this thing back in schedule and see how do we shift things so that we are on our regular schedule going forward. Next item is, we had already gone over the SORA West, but they completed everything. The last remaining item that they had was a lateral that they didn't leave us on their property. We didn't know if properly capped. We had them line it. There's no question it won't be long-term infiltration. Last item again is 720 Spring Mill, and as I said last time, Ty Burkowski is being awesome with this. He really is being there. He redesigned it. He actually engineered it. We accepted I gave him direction after the last board meeting of what our preferred option was. Well, he went back out, paid a professional engineer to design it and put it on there. He's ordered the materials, has kept in constant contact with me. Really, honestly, not what I was expecting, and very happy, and I will give him all the props in the world for standing up and doing it the right way. That completes my report, unless the board has any questions.
I just have a question on that.
Yes.
So there was original design, right?
Yes.
So it meeting spec.
Yes.
So he went out and got an engineer to he didn't redesign he didn't redesign it, he developed a new work plan.
No, he's ripping it out and replacing and putting it in properly.
And putting it in way according to the original design.
Close. Yeah, close to it. It's not exactly the original design because we basically dug back closer to the street rather than going to the next section. But yeah.
You also used a bigger
diameter pipe,
yeah.
But we meet our standards and DEP standards. I mean, there's never a good solution, but this was the best of, and I don't even say the best of bad solutions. This is clearly an acceptable
Best solution.
It's
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, no, so we didn't compromise and say it's the best of what we could do. No, we made him do it right. And it's going to be very expensive. I mean, he's going to pay more for this replacement than he did for the entire installation of the sanitary sewer. But,
Thanks.
yep.
Any other questions? Hearing no other questions, do I have a motion to accept the engineer's report this evening?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is our operation manager's report.
Okay, I wanted to start by first thanking Brent for encouraging me, and then for the board for supporting me to go on this convention.
Could you turn your microphone on, please?
It was very helpful, very insightful. I learned a lot of different processes and equipment, and met a lot of vendors and peers too. I made a lot of contacts with people in my position that, I mean, everywhere from New York to San Fran. So I've got a stack of business cards. I gave a stack out. I still have a lot of reading that I brought back that I can, really absorb. And I've been telling Brent all about it for 2 days now. So thank you very much for supporting that. And I will have more. I don't know if everybody saw the summary I sent out to you yesterday. I do have more stuff to follow that up. The other thing I had was this morning I received the application for Fun Fest for this year. So we can't approve that today because it's not on the agenda, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. We usually do the $1,000 gold sponsorship, and I don't know how I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So.
Thank you.
And the last thing I had, I just noticed in the packet, I guess I was in a hurry to get my report done before I left. I said that I was going to attach a report to a class I took before I left, so I'll send that out to you individually, so you can see what I meant. So, but that concludes my report.
Any questions? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion to accept the operations manager's report this evening?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next up is collections and maintenance reports.
So there is not a collections report this month. There's
Okay.
only a maintenance report.
Only a maintenance report, you said?
Yes,
Okay.
with everything that went on.
Yep, no worries. So we will have that as a follow-up item in a subsequent
It'll be
upload?
added to next month's report.
Okay, thank you. Then could I have a motion to accept the maintenance supervisor's report?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And now we have the executive director's report.
It's very minimal at this point in time, other than, I said last month, we've been continuing to work on, we got a review from our Pennsylvania Rural Association on our evaluation of our rates. Preliminary, I think is, the board should know, is if you look at our rate structure right now for the next 2 years, 2025, 2026, we're a 9% increase and a 9% increase. Pennsylvania Rural, as Shannon met up, gave us a free analysis, since we're a part of that organization. It's fair to say that their analysis was a 75% increase from 2027 through 2031. Just to let you know, I was not shocked. The gentleman, when he presented it to us, said, "Am I sitting down?" I know Shannon was shocked. I anticipated this. We are continuing to evaluate it in conjunction with everything that Shannon and I have done, reviewing every aspect of where our cash balance is going to be. For me, as Fred said, we even looking at our capital fund on where we stand with our current capital funds and where we stand in the future. Preliminary to 75% with a 15%. I'm just giving a preliminary. I think it's necessary. Everyone knows this. You're looking at the next phase for a 5-year, 15% a year through 2031 to subside with everything that's going on from the capital fund and where we stand to support our cash funds. As you're aware, we are taking our capital that we get from our hookups that pay for our loans at this point in time. If you recall, a year ago, we were basically down to almost zero in cash as of a year. If you look at our funds right now, we're at 1.5 million. So we are systematically getting our cash reserves up, but we do have some projects that are required that we need to do as we move out. They might have to move out a little in the future, but the goal is to sustainability by 2031, 2032, that we'll be fiscal responsible, that we're handling our capital investments for the future. We're doing it by system. That's what the game currently is. Shane and I have been working on this back and forth basically for the last 2 months, evaluate every aspect where we're going to stand with cash, where we expect, even though we're currently negotiating with we're even looking at that evaluation. So that's just a quick snapshot. We're not making any decision. I just want to realize where we stand, and I'm looking at that far in the future, 2031, 2032, where we need to be. And we'll be sustainable for that. It's just going to be, our rates are slow. but we don't want to do anything that's not correct how we set ourselves up in that early 2030. So that's a quick snapshot.
So that's where our strategic planning is going to come in really important. So I think the first phase is Fred being able to look at that capital report. I know we moved a bunch of things around over the last couple of years to try and fit it within that schedule to help Plymouth and to help, but I think we have to remember ourselves and from a strategic planning perspective, not only look at what our current funding is to support what we have today, but what are other opportunities that are out there that could bring in other revenue sources. So we've touched on that over, the year or so of other opportunities. But I think going to these meetings and finding out what else we have the capacity to be able to bring in to help kind of lower that burden that's put on the ratepayer specifically is going to be important for us.
Because, so far, you guys have literally the last 5 years, and almost since I've been your engineer, almost all of your capital projects besides the odor control and the RBCs were paid for by grants. You can't always rely upon grants to pay for everything. What I like to do is the next step with some of my more rural townships that are not as sophisticated as you guys are, is I take their capital budget and then I do a cash flow analysis right underneath it and say, this is how much you're putting away into your capital savings account every year. Do you have enough money to pay for all these, or do you have to take a loan out? Because you got these projects that you can't push out. You're not going to have time to accumulate that cash. And the unknown here has, and we've been very fortunate with large developments that have come through. Multiple $1 million in tapping fees over the last couple of years probably won't be there. So that might be something that once we do the capital budget, then it goes over to Brent and Shannon from a cash flow, and for you as a board to say, all right, Fred, I understand what you want to do and when you want to do it and why. It goes back to you to say, can we afford it? Or what do we have to do to afford it? Or do we take a loan out? How do we fund this? And that's where it goes really to the board.
And we already looked at Fred's capital budget for last year, and we put those dollar amounts in with escalating because of inflation already in there. And based upon this, when we gave it to Pennsylvania Rural and how we developed it, do all our graphs and analysis spreadsheets, we put the plug in place already that we can do our projects with this rate structure.
And then we have to plug in place the pension liability that we just heard about, along with the collective bargaining agreement that we need to negotiate, which is a multi-year deal. So we got to kind of stack all of this to really understand where that all is coming in and then how it's being funded. So that's kind of what you and Shannon are going to really need to be.
Really throwing I've been throwing a lot of data at her and taking his plan from last year and trying to plug and play this. And again, Fred's been very successful with his grants. We did not put successful in that. And it depends on how we go out, be aggressive with our grants. Conshohocken's been unbelievable, knock on wood, how successful you guys been here. It's been unbelievable successful. So that's basically a snapshot for that. We'll continue as we migrate to that, and Fred and I and our team will meet on the capital budget over the next couple of weeks. Yeah. And we'll even plug, if he sees something different, we'll plug that in the plan. And then other than that, there's not much to say other than, I can't wait till our primary setup is complete. And that will help us out with solids handling more. We continue to track with our budget and that. Other than that concludes my report, and I would like to have a short executive session as well for personnel matters.
I have a question. The sewer bills for the residents, they're based on water bills, right?
Correct.
So what is the impact to us since Aqua is raising their rates? Like, does that mean more revenue for us?
We just get a volume from them. We just multiply your water consumption times a rate that this board sets. It has nothing to do with your actual water bill. We just use the flow data from them for as our method of billing. So they get a minimum service charge if you use so many gallons, then everything else, you pay as you go to make it equal. That way a family of, a family of 8, and a little old lady are proportionally charged the same, but if you have public sewer, the minimum sewer bill covers that. Because there's so much to have the privilege of having sewer. Whether it flows or not, Brent gets a salary, Ed gets a salary, Shannon gets a salary, so.
Any other questions? Hearing no other questions, do I have a motion to accept the executive director's report?
I'll make the motion.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have any old or new business that we need to talk about today before we conclude the meeting? Okay, this is the conclusion of the meeting. We are going to call an executive session post this meeting. All right, meeting adjourned. Oh. May I have a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.